Let's talk about osmoregulation in animals. We are specifically looking to identify and explain homeostatic mechanisms that maintain water balance in animals. Now, all organisms must adapt to manage their salt and water balance. Like every adaptation, it's going to be really dependent on the environment in which they live. So maintaining water balance is different in aquatic and terrestrial organisms, makes sense. It also varies between saltwater and freshwater organisms in those marine environments. Now, osmoregulators are animals which maintain internal osmotic concentrations of body fluids regardless of the external concentration changes, okay? Everything inside stays the same. Osmoconformers, however, are animals that conform their body fluid to be the same concentration as the external environment, so they're isotonic with the surroundings. Now, water balance and salt balance go hand in hand. I'm going to keep talking about them interchangeably almost. Salts form ions in solution, and cells have to then keep concentrations of these ions in tight control for the chemical processes to occur in and around the cell. If the concentration of salt in solution around the cell is too high, water can leave the cell via osmosis into the extracellular fluid. So to maintain water balance, it's also maintaining salt balance. Now, water loss and gain depends on a number of things, right? The amount of physical activity you're doing, the temperature around you, the humidity around you, what you eat and drink. We should be drinking around 3,000 ml of water a day, so 3 litres, but we're going to get some of that from, food as well. It's going to vary quite a bit, and tiny amounts of water are also made in cellular respiration, don't forget, but the rest has to be consumed by us. Now, urine is a good test of whether you're hydrated or not. You should be urinating anywhere between 4 to 8 times a day, and your urine should be a pale yellow colour, and you can tell, when you're hydrated or when you're not hydrated. The gain or loss of salt is going to be highly dependent on your diet, right? Most of the common ions that are ingested are sodium, potassium, and calcium, and the salt is lost through urine, but also through sweat and feces. So the urinary system works to filter out excess salts in the kidney and excrete them, but most of them are actually reabsorbed back into the body during nephron filtration. So we use them for so many other things. You definitely need salts. Okay, so we have a control of water balance, but our body has to internally detect what changes are happening. So and these changes are being detected by osmoreceptors, and these are located in the hypothalamus in the brain. They monitor water and solute concentration, and also baroreceptors. Okay, and they are located in the atria of the heart, and they detect changes in blood pressure, which is affected by blood volume, which is going to change how, be dependent based on how much water is in your blood. So cells and extracellular fluid have a pretty similar concentration, which is also known as osmolality, of water due to the permeability of their membrane. So if extracellular fluid changes, and this is going to affect the internal cellular osmolality. Having said that, your cytoplasm inside the cell usually does have a few more potassium, magnesium ions, a little less sodium and chloride than the extracellular fluid. Now, many marine animals have body fluids that are isotonic with seawater, particularly around the mouths of freshwater river, because the tide is coming in and out and the levels of salinity have to change constantly. So these organisms don't osmoregulate, they just kind of go with the flow. Their body fluid concentration fluctuates with the external salinity. So marine bony fish are osmoregulators, and their body fluid is actually hypertonic. So they have quite a lot going on, these fish, right? Marine fish also drink large amounts of seawater, okay, whenever they open their mouths. So, that's going to have an impact on different things as well. So they have these sort of adaptations to help that osmolality, stay where it needs to be or go with the flow as it required. So 3 processes help the osmoregulators, having scales, having kidney filtration and secretion of salts, and they're just all on the screen there. And freshwater fish have the opposite problem, and their internal concentrations actually become too dilute. Okay, so we've got 4 different types of osmoregulatory adaptations we're going to talk about. Number 1, we're talking behavioural this time, so you might be talking, what are we eating and drinking? Simple. Also, hey, we're burrowing during the heat of the day. This is a kangaroo rat that does that. We might be talking longer term burrowing, going into hibernation, known as estivation. We can be going into that during drought, or hot periods to conserve water, like a summer hibernation. This thing here is, this thing here is a lungfish, and at the summer season, the lake, might dry up. The fish gets itself buried into the mud, and when the mud at the lake starts getting really dry, the fish secretes lots of mucus to cover the entire body. And this mucus kind of works like a sac, and it provides moisture and shelter until the end of the dry season. So during this time, the fish actually breathe through this gross little mucus tube. Okay, structural adaptations. We're talking a waterproof outer layer. We might be talking the keratinous scales of reptiles, a dead layer of epithelium on mammals. We've got a whole layer of dead skin there. We might be talking a waxy cuticle of an exoskeleton of an insect. Nephron length impacts how much water is being reabsorbed by the body. The longer the nephron, the more opportunity the water has to be conserved in the body and not wasted as urine. So desert animals have a really long nephron. Tissues that are tolerant to water loss. We might be talking that fat storage in camels, for example, allows them to survive up to 2 months without any water at all. Okay, physiological adaptations, similar. Okay, so filtration process of the nephron, the kidneys and the excretory system in themselves, physiological mechanisms to maintain osmotic balance in organisms. Even though they seem like default in our mammalian body, these are pretty complex and magnificent adaptations to keep us alive. Now, the reduction of kidney filtrate, allows the reabsorption of the water from the urine, invertebrates or rectal glands of insects even. And metabolic water produced during cellular respiration is another way to gain a few, water molecules. Not many, but, if we actually do the cellular respiration from fat, we get more of that than from carbohydrates. And that's why many desert animals utilize fat, for their water needs. All right, ADH is a really interesting hormone, and it regulates water reabsorption. Right, remembering reabsorbing it from the nephron so it's not wasted. It's acting on that kidney to increase or decrease the amount of water that's being reabsorbed, to increase osmolality in the blood. Now, it's a diuretic. A diuretic is something which promotes the production of urine, so it's not a diuretic, but the increase of ADH, right, the increased ADH, it leads to less urine because it's encouraging the body to retain water. But a decrease in ADH leads to more urine, okay? So little ADH leads to a high volume of urine, but a lot of ADH leads to only a small volume of urine. Now, alcohol inhibits ADH function, okay? So the body falsely believes that water and blood volume are fine, and it leaves, it means that lots of urine is created. It kind of stops that action, and therefore you have a high volume of dilute urine, which is why when you drink a lot, you need to pee a lot. Caffeine does the same. Aldosterone is a different kind of hormone, and it regulates sodium and potassium levels, and it increases potassium excretion into urine and causes sodium reabsorption. So because more sodium is being reabsorbed, water is also drawn into the blood, so the blood pressure and the blood volume actually increase. And there's so many triggers for the release of aldosterone, and one of them is low blood pressure. There's a lot of adaptations. This is a very complex unit, so I really encourage you to go and read up in Pearson, okay, in this particular chapter.